Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Greeting from Bogor. Let me introduce myself to you. My name is Aang Hidayat. You can call me is Aang or Aang. I am the first author of this paper, and I am going to present our newest article titled The Effect of Blended Learning Model on the Motivation and Learning Outcome of Credit Account Officer Student on Mikro Credit Analysis Material in PT LKM Bogor. This research is based on the correlation study of blended learning media with motivation and student learning outcomes on microcredit analysis for account officer student at PT LKM Bogor. Let's go start. The development of information technology is very important in the teaching and learning process because technology is an integral part of facilitating the delivery of learning message quickly to students. In the teaching and learning process, a model is needed that can facilitate between educator and student in carrying out the learning process. There are quite a lot of various learning models, but which learning model are the most effective in the present? LKM Bogor is a company engaged in non-bank financial institution, having employed the credit account officer section, who are specialized in conducting credit analysis in order for this good credit quality. On the other hand, the understanding of account officer credit toward credit analysts still need to be improved both in motivation and learning outcomes. During the current pandemic, there is no training or direct education regarding credit analysis to increase the ability of account officer credit as student in the event because it avoids the transmission of COVID-19. It makes a solution to deal with the problem that occur. The solution is with the outgoing research by applying the blended learning model to microcredit analysis material for student credit officer accounts at PT LKM Bogor. Second slide. In this purpose, number one, the purpose of the study is to determine the difference between the blended learning model on student motivation and learning outcomes compared to conventional learning models. Number two, to find out an increase in the blended learning model on student motivation and learning outcomes. Next slide. This type of research use an experiment. The type of research in question is quasi-experimental design. The study population was as many as 34 students carried out by random assignment. Consists of two class groups, namely 17 students of the West Account Officer class group and 17 students of the East Account Officer class group. Determination of the experimental class group is divided into two, namely the experimental class group and the control class group, which can be done by random assignment or by randomly selecting the class group. You do this by drawing a small paper with the same number of each class group. The result of the lottery will get 17 students each. The two classes are expected to produce a homogeneous class, which will later be tested with the homogeneity test. Next slide, data collection technique. Data collection techniques using written tests and questionnaires. Next slide, definition of blended learning. Blended learning is a learning model that combines offline learning patterns, namely face-to-face with face-to-virtual online learning patterns. Then, definition of conventional learning. Conventional learning is learning that is usually carried out by educator face-to-face with student. Next slide. Explanation of data collection techniques. Written tests given to students before and after treatment in both classes groups. The validity of instrument was carried out in this study, namely the rational validity of the judgment, namely consulting the instrument with expert, namely supervisor and other lecturers who had competence in their field and were asked for their opinion on the material of the instrument made. Next slide. From the data collection method and technique, a hypothesis is obtained, namely, number one, there are differences in motivation and learning outcomes of account officer credit students who are taught in blended learning compared to account officer credit students who are taught conventional learning. Number two, there is an increase in student motivation and student learning outcome due to the application of blended learning with a fairly good value. Next slide. Conclusion. Conclusion, it is based on the question method. It is expected that the result is a difference in learning motivation and student learning outcome with a blended learning process compared to conventional learning process. The second result of expected to result in an increase in learning motivation and student learning outcome with the blended learning process. That's all I can say in this presentation. Apologies for all the shortcoming. I thank you very much for your attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.